Well, good morning again, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
To St.Bernardine's Thursday morning Bible study. I was saying to Dee, I really want to finish the 2 letters of John today. So we've been doing John, I think, for 2 years. So maybe we can move on. And then I do want to talk at the end, right? If we wanted to go into do some sessions on the catechism, what topics we might want to cover. So let's jump right into, we finished the first letter of John, and now we are going to do hopefully the second and third letter. Each of them is just one chapter. So they're not very long. They cover much of the same things. So who would like to start reading? Chapter 1, verse 1.
I'll read it.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
Yep.
The presbyter to the chosen lady, and to her children, whom I love in truth, and not only I, but also all who know the truth, because of the truth that dwells in us and will be with us forever. Grace, mercy, and peace will be with us from God the Father and from Jesus Christ, the Father's Son, in truth and love. I rejoice greatly to find some of your children walking in the truth, just as we were commanded by the Father. But now, lady, I ask you not as though I were writing a new commandment, but the one we have had from the beginning. Let us love one another. For this is love, that we walk according to his commandments. This is the commandment, as you heard from the beginning, in which you should walk.
Okay, let's just stop right there. All right, so we're starting a new letter. Same author. What are your, from what you heard, what are your first thoughts, first impressions? Anything that's different that you don't remember seeing before, and anything similar that you do remember seeing before?
He's still talking about love, and he seems to always talk about love.
Okay, yeah. So again, that the one commandment, right? Love one another. That is, Kathleen, that is the central theme of John, the Gospel of John and the letters of John, that everything comes down to love. And remember, in the gospel, there's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. The only commandment I leave you is to love one another as I have loved you. And then in the first letter of John, God is love, and whoever loves God remains in him, and he in God. So central theme of John, love. Anything else?
Who is the lady?
All right, there you go. That's something new.
That was my question. Yeah.
That's something new.
And it's capitalized.
Any thoughts?
And the presbyter as well.
Presbyter, that's new too. So any thoughts about what that is? What's it referring to?
So he must be visiting some kind of church, and his wife and children, I guess.
Well, he's writing to a church community. That certainly is the case. So if you were to give a title to a church community, what might you call it?
A title.
Yeah. When we talk about the church and we give the church a pronoun other than it, what do we, how do
It's usually female.
Female, right? Her. Anybody know why generally the church is regarded as female?
No.
Because she's the bride of Christ.
Exactly. The church.
Oh, thank you, Greta. I mean, Gretchen.
That's okay.
Yep,
My
the
brain
church
went
is the
dead.
bride of Christ, and so often she is, imagined as female, and that's why we, call Holy Mother Church, right? And we refer to church as she. So lady is really a reference to a smaller church, a little church that he's writing to. They think he might be writing to Ephesus, the church in Ephesus, which is where he lived and died. I think he died in Ephesus. Pretty sure he did. So the chosen lady is the church, the community to whom he's writing. How about a presbyter? Anybody know what a presbyter is?
Well, that would be somebody like you, right?
Like a bishop, maybe?
Minister, a minister,
Okay.
priest,
Yeah,
someone in charge.
Yep. Okay. So literally, presbyter is
Believer.
actually a Greek word. So presbyter literally means elder. And we know, at this point in the church's history, we don't know that the ministries have, been formed fully. But like today, we would say there are 3 orders of clergy. And if we were to use the Greek, we would say diakonos, presbyter, presbyteros, and episkopos. So diakonos would be what?
Deacons.
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 Presbyteros would be
The elder.
The priest.
a priest. And episkopos would be
The bishop.
Lay ministers.
bishop. No, those are all together. I mean that we've worked it out to those 3 orders. And we've there's a hierarchy. The bishop is the highest, then the priest, and then the deacon. It's not clear at this time that all of that has been worked out, but it is clear that a title presbyter was being used for someone that was considered a leader. And we know there are many Christian churches today that have elders, and that's it's a title and a position of leadership. So who is the presbyter?
So the leader of the church.
Yeah. But who in this case? Who is the presbyter?
John.
Oh, John. Yeah.
John's the presbyter. So it's John the presbyter writing to the chosen lady and to her children, whom I love in truth. Okay.
So he's writing to John and
No,
church.
John is writing.
John is writing.
John the presbyter is writing to the chosen lady and to her children.
Because he says, whom I love, whom
The presbyter to the chosen lady is the church, right?
That's the church and her
And
children.
the children is us, the parishioners.
The members of the church.
Yeah, the members of the church. Oh, okay.
Okay, so
To the chosen lady. Okay, the way he worded it. Okay, we had to go back and look at it. Okay.
So it's the beginning. It's the salutation.
Right. Okay.
Saying who the writer is, who he's writing to, and then a very standard greeting: grace, mercy, and peace.
Right.
From God our Father and from our Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, so that's a little new. He didn't refer to himself as a presbyter in the first letter. And any idea why he might be giving himself a title here? Any idea what might be coming up that he's got that it's important that they know that he's a presbyter?
Mm-hmm.
What about John's persecution? Because he is this the same John that had to be exiled to Patmos, and maybe he was feeling the heat, and he wouldn't be around too much longer.
Nope, not so much that.
Okay.
It's clear he's going to have to solve some problems here. So he's going to
Oh.
invoke his authority, right?
Right,
As
right.
the presbyter. So, you know, I'm your friend until I have to tell you what to do, and then I'm your pastor.
Right. And then in this case, he's using these letters to explain a lot of things, so he needs to say it with authority.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see there's going to be a problem here that he's going to have to address, and you know, he's making it clear that he's an elder, so he's got some authority here. How
Okay.
about in the second paragraph, any themes that sound very familiar? There's a couple of just themes. We did pick out the one of love and then the commandment, right? And what's the image that's very Johannine, as we would say?
Truth, walking in truth.
Walking, right? Remember, he uses that image a lot in his letter.
Right.
That we're kind of on this journey and we walk in truth. Truth is another major theme. So you could see that, you know, there's a lot of consistency in terms of the first letter and now the themes he introduces at the very beginning of this letter. So now let's start looking at some of the problem that he's going to address. So keep going, Michael. Verse 7. Did we lose Michael?
He's still here. I mean,
I forgot to unmute myself. Sorry. Many deceivers have gone out into the world, those who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh. Such is the deceitful one and the Antichrist. Look to yourselves that you do not lose what we worked for, but may receive a full recompense. Anyone who is so progressive as not to remain in the teachings of the Christ does not have God. Whoever remains in the teaching has the Father and the Son. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this doctrine, do not receive him in your house or even greet him, for whoever greets him shares in his evil works.
Ooh.
I'll keep going.
Yep. Yeah, we'll stop there.
Ooh.
All
That
right.
is harsh.
All
Don't
right.
even
So
talk to him.
what's the problem here?
Wow.
Okay. This is
Deceivers among us.
Right. Reference to the
Deceivers among us.
Antichrist.
And
Yeah.
what's the main problem here?
That people are transgressing.
What are the deceivers saying or doing that has John upset?
It seems like they've gone out in the world and came back with a different view of who Jesus Christ is or what they believe. And
they're not acknowledging Jesus Christ as coming in the
and they're
flesh,
bringing that
as in
belief
verse
back.
7.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, D is right. They go into the world. They have the good news, and then they come back, but they now deny that Jesus actually came in the flesh.
Right.
Okay.
And the one that really gets me is the last sentence. Next to the last sentence. Anyone who these people. Anyone that if anyone comes to you and does not bring this doctrine, do not receive him in your house and greet him. It could be my children coming in my house because they've been out in the world, and this is the truth. They've been out in the world, they come back in with a whole different thought. And he's telling them with that thought, do not receive them no matter who they are. You know, even if you're your child, you do not receive them because they're coming back with a whole another doctrine that does not have to do with Jesus Christ coming in the flesh.
So why is it so important to believe that Jesus came in the flesh?
It's important because he did.
And he's our salvation.
Right.
But
that's a whole faith story there. Jesus came back to save us all.
Exactly.
yeah, but you know, he could still have been God and appeared to have been in the flesh and walked among us and taught us and all those kinds of things. Why do we hold on to that idea that Jesus was fully human as well as fully divine?
Then how could we believe that he died on the cross if he wasn't flesh? How could we have witnessed that?
Well, I mean, what they would say, you know, those who were denying that Jesus was in the flesh just said that he appeared to be in the flesh. So, you know, that's how we saw all of those things, is that he appeared to us in that way, but he was not really fully human. Why is it important that Jesus was fully human?
It is important because to know that he was human.
Because we are human.
Okay, and so
what about love? Him, the ultimate sacrifice of giving his self for us. That love he keeps talking about.
That he shared everything that we shared.
Right. How could we relate?
That God came down in the flesh of Jesus Christ to share in everything that we had.
Right. And that's the only way we could relate to him, if we believed he himself was human.
Not so much relate to him, but I believe he was a child. He was born here and he grew up as a child and then into a man. And God, I believe, did this so that we would trust him more. If some being just appeared out of nowhere, we would wonder who it is. Where'd he come from? What does he want?
Mm-hmm.
I just believe this was the whole purpose of God putting Jesus here as a baby, as a new child.
That makes sense, Regina. That's very good.
Well, all those things are relevant, yes. You know, at the heart, this is actually why it would maybe be good to do some of the catechism, because these are very, you know, significant theological questions. At the heart of it is that by becoming human, God joined himself to our nature, to us.
Right.
And then by dying and rising from the dead, he transforms our nature. Okay. So that we are then caught up into that salvation, because now human nature is one with God and is transformed by God. Whereas, I mean, you know, God could have just come and appeared to be human, but then he would have, you know, he would have to like do something to make it clear that we would rise from the dead too, you know, even though, you know, because otherwise it just looks like he appeared to do all of those things. So at the heart of it is that idea of salvation, that it's not that God could only have saved us that way, but God chose to save us that way, by becoming one of us, experiencing everything we experience, even suffering and death, and then transforming that into an eternal living being. So the risen Christ, is the risen Christ human?
Yes.
Yes.
Risen Christ, no.
Not at that point. He's purely divine at that point.
Yes.
At what point?
When he rose again, I think he was always 100% divine, but I don't think he was any longer human.
Okay, no, so that's not the case. That's heresy.
Heresy?
Heresy.
But when he came back, he came in a glorified body.
Right. The risen Christ is still a human being.
Oh, okay.
Okay. He's a human being. He's you know, fully divine and fully human. But
in a glorified body, right?
Right. He's a transformed human in a glorified body.
Transformed human in a glorified body.
Yeah. So he comes to us now or he has now, I put it that way. He has now the body that we're going to have after we die and rise from the dead. but he's still fully human and he's fully divine. Neither of those, he does not lose either of those natures through the resurrection. And that's important, right? Because if he lost his human nature, then where does that leave us? If he leaves human nature behind to become resurrected, then that means we're left behind, right? Yeah. But by remaining human and being transformed and resurrected into a glorified body, that's how we know that can happen to us.
What about the Virgin Mary?
And I was just going to say that's exactly what the doctrine of the Assumption is. So the doctrine of the Assumption is that Mary now, we have to wait until the end of time for the resurrection of our bodies. But Mary was given the privilege of being resurrected. She now exists like Jesus in a resurrected body, in a transformed and glorified body.
So what are the other people talking about? That this didn't happen, or he appeared to have done these things, but not really? He was a magician?
So some of this comes through, if you remember the doctrine, the Gnosticism. You remember that word?
Yeah.
Okay, so most of this is coming from those folks who say, union with God and salvation is through a secret knowledge.
Oh, really?
And if you can tap into that knowledge, then you are saved.
Oh, really? Okay.
So you can see if you're coming from that perspective, that unity with God comes through a special secret knowledge with God, then God doesn't really need to become human, right? Because the body becomes irrelevant in that venture. It's all about the spirit and the mind uniting itself with that special knowledge, which is of God. You get that?
Yeah, so I muted everybody. That's why you're here.
Yeah. So, this doctrine of Jesus being fully human, fully divine doesn't really get defined, I think, for another 300 or 400 years. But we could see from the beginning that was an idea out there, that God didn't really become human. He appeared to be human. But you can see the difficulty with that idea. And another difficulty is that it then cheapens, right? All material things, our bodies, our world become meaningless because they're not caught up in in salvation. It's just our soul. And unfortunately, there are a lot of Christians today who still hold on to the idea that our soul is the only thing that matters. But that's not a Catholic view. I mean, we are body and soul, and when we will be raised on the last day, it will be both our body and soul that are transformed into a glorified body and soul, and be one with God.
I have one more question. I'm still confused with what they talk about appeared. I mean, he was here, but he appeared to be here.
It's sort of like, imagine he's a ghost, but he's able to present himself in a way that it looks like he's human to you, and he can do all of these things, but he's not really human.
So they saw him, but they didn't really see him. That's what they said.
No, they really saw him, but he wasn't really human.
Yeah, well, yeah, they saw him, but he wasn't really human that they saw.
They were looking at a spirit.
This is crazy. Okay.
Well, I mean, but that's the heresy, right? I mean, and that's what John from the very beginning now is dealing with, that we have to believe that Jesus really came in the flesh. Remember, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And the Word didn't appear to become flesh. The Word became flesh. So that's really the central thing. Now I love this line. Anyone who is so progressive as not to remain in the teaching. What does that? What would you? Can you? I think there's actually something positive and hopeful in that. But I think it's also, hey, you know, don't get too far out ahead of us, right? What does that imply? What is positive about that's kind of hidden in there, even though it's a, you know, he's remonstrating, you know, he's rebuking folks.
Getting beyond what's being taught at the time, forward thinking.
That is if you're so progressive, but what if you're not so progressive? What does that mean then?
It's not. Well, they no longer believe in Jesus.
Well, no, they do. I mean, you can become
But
so progressive.
They can be turned
The-
back.
Maybe the level of understanding, maybe.
Yeah, well, what I get from it, I don't want to kind of toy around too much, is that it's clear to John that it's okay for us to begin to develop teachings, right? It's okay for us to start figuring out who this Jesus was, and everything, things that, you know, maybe weren't quite apparent to us in the beginning, but now we can begin to kind of fill in some of the blanks as we've experienced this. But we have to be careful, right? That we don't become so progressive that we then move outside of what is truth.
So that means that that's who we are. But that's who we are.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So what he's saying
We're not doing that. Wait a minute.
Okay, it's okay for you to do theology, basically.
Right. That's what he's saying. That's who each and every one of us are doing. We're trying to figure out who God is, who Jesus is, and how he moved around this earth, but also how he moves within us.
Right. And we have to kind of develop a theology around that.
Right.
You know, and as I said, you know, many times, in many ways, we're way ahead of where the first Christians were, because we've had 2,000 years of this reflection and theologizing or whatever, and, you know, developing an understanding that we believe remains, you know, in the truth. So it's within the confines of the truth, but we're not so progressive that we've moved outside the teachings of Christ.
Right. Esther, I'm sorry, Esther.
Here's what intrigues my mind, though, right? Because I keep looking at those who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh. So where does that seed get planted that he didn't come in the flesh? And I know the key word is believe. I'm just rolling this around in my head, but is it that it challenges human thinking, that how could a man who we call God is now walking among us in the flesh? And I think, is it that because it goes against the human thinking that this can't possibly be? I'm just thinking of that as where did that seed gets planted?
It's hard to believe, isn't it? Hard to believe.
Yeah.
I mean, even today, it's one of the central mysteries, right? How could Jesus be fully human and fully divine? And back then, you know, they had notions of divinity and they had notions of humanity, and the idea that a person could have both is just hadn't ever, you know, in certain circles, just isn't acceptable. Certainly not acceptable to Judaism. So yeah, it's hard. So then you come up with alternative thoughts, right? So then you say, all right, well, he didn't really become human, but he just appeared to us as human. But he, let's preserve the dignity of God's divinity, right? That, if you allow God to become human, somehow you dirty God up, because, material things are bad. The only things that's good are spiritual things. So those ideas are out there, and they long preceded Jesus. Plato is the one who begins to develop the idea of a body and soul, like separate, right? And Plato was what, I don't know how many hundreds of years before Jesus. So there are ideas out there, and people now are trying to take the story of Jesus Christ and fit it in to their worldview. And for some, the idea that he becomes fully human and fully divine is just too much for them. They can't accept that, given their philosophical worldview. So then they decide that he didn't really come in the flesh. He just appeared to come in the flesh.
Can I piggyback on that? Mike, I kind of like what you said, in that it challenged human thinking. Because I think about when Jesus was moving around, some people saw him, some people didn't, some people heard stories of him. But then during that time, there was a lot of magicians, magical stuff, charlatans.
Right.
So
Still there.
if they walked away from belief that Jesus was real, really human, really divine, then they could conjure up their own ideas. Well, no, he was just like a magician and he did this, and that wasn't real. So I kind of like your idea of it challenging the human mind. Like you said, Father Richard, wasn't part of their worldview. Could that also make sense? Magicians and charlatans and
all of that stuff. I mean, remember, this is all occurring in a context. It's not like Christianity comes and there's a clean slate and nobody believes anything, and now we're teaching about Christ. They come to this because some of them are pagans and they believe in all the Greek gods, and some of them believe in magicians and sorcery, and some of them are Jews and believe in the one God. You know what I mean? So the teaching of the apostles going out and teaching about Jesus is occurring in a very complex world. And that's exactly right. Some people can accept the idea that God became human, and others just can't accept it.
Why do I've heard many times that the Jewish look at Jesus as being a prophet, like John the Baptist and all the others. They look at Jesus as being solely a prophet. Do they have any explanation for his death and resurrection?
Well, I mean, they would not believe that he was resurrected. They would just say that's what his followers claim to have happened.
Right.
Okay. And right, and in Judaism, the divine is much bigger than anything material. And remember, you couldn't it was really the second commandment for the Jews. It's part of our first commandment. But thou shalt not create any graven images. So the idea that God would become human, almost God would be violating his own law, because now he was going to be presenting God in a graven image, which is the human body. You get that?
Yeah.
And that's why.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Why, as Christians, then we get rid of the quote unquote graven body, because we believe that God did become human, and by becoming human, he kind of changed, that law. He now elevated the material to a higher level, because he became. And so we don't have to worry about. So we do make graven images, right? We have statues of Jesus. We have statues of the Blessed Mother. We have statues of the saints. We have paintings. We even paint pictures of God, right? As an old man, unfortunately, an old white man, but we do that, and we don't feel that we're violating the commandment not to make any graven images, because we say God changed that image. Once God became human, he changed that not that image, that commandment.
Well, that's just a Catholic thought.
What's that?
That's a Catholic thought about the graven images, right?
No.
About having graven images? I mean, the idea of that thou shalt not create any graven images unto me is in the 10 Commandments.
Right, exactly. But you said we elevated that.
I mean, Catholics aren't the only one. So, certainly,
okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And Orthodox are perfectly comfortable with quote unquote graven images. Many Protestant denominations have more concern about that.
Yes, they do.
And but not all of them, but many of them have more concern about that, which I certainly can appreciate. I do think sometimes Catholics get a little pagan when it comes to their graven images. When you rub a rosary over something because you think it's going to bless it, that's not good Christianity.
my mind is about to explode. It's so many things swirled around. But I know that you said that these belief teachings had to be developed, being in the complex world, right?
Yep.
And so I think with the graven image, is it a desire that we desire to have something to believe in when we see or experience the phenomena that is greater than the human experience? Then we have to attribute it to a God or something like that. But looking at that complex world, you have so many, I think Esther said, the magicians and blah, blah, blah. But the desire to have something to believe in, I think I'll just start right there.
Well, the desire to believe in something, that tends to be a general human trait. And so most human cultures do have some sort of religious belief, right? That there's something beyond them.
Right.
Not everyone, but most. I would say the idea of the graven images or the need for graven images is the fact that as humans, we are sensory people. So we perceive through our senses. We smell, we hear, we taste, we touch. That's how we engage the world. The world is real to us because we can perceive it through our senses. And as a result, there is a desire to have visual, touchable, tasteable, smellable elements that connect us with the divine. And in Catholicism, that's what the sacraments are all about, right? In Catholicism and Orthodoxy as well, so we believe that by becoming human, God, as I said, he elevated the status of the created world. And so now we believe we can know God through our senses. It doesn't just have to be in our mind that we know God, but that we can come to know God through our senses. And so we've developed whole ways of worshiping that invoke our senses.
May I add, I was just thinking about in the Black Catholic Church, for the past 50, 60, 70 years, we have been having images of Christ as Black because it was personalized. It became more tangible to us because God was like us. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's just extending.
So that's a visual, right? Mm-hmm. But how about taste? Where does that come in?
The Eucharist. The Eucharist, yes.
You know,
Yeah,
the
the
fact that
Eucharist.
we taste and we can touch and taste God in that. Where, how about smell?
Incense and
Yep, incense is, now that's not a sacrament, it's what we call a sacramental, but it's an ability to come to know God through the sense of smell. Um, uh, what's um, what's hearing?
we hear the word of God.
The liturgy.
Yeah.
The word of God, the scripture.
Yeah.
Also in our
Psalm.
sacraments, you know, we say all of our sacraments have a visual sign as well as a word.
Right.
Right. So what's the word in the Eucharist? What is the fundamental words that come to let us know God is at work here?
Did you say did you say body and blood?
Yeah, this is my body, this is my blood. Those
Yeah.
words are essential, right?
Yes.
You have to hear those words as well as see the bread and the wine in order for that to become a passageway into Christ. You know, how about in baptism? What's the words?
Water.
No, I don't want to say anything about water. I use water. That's the visual.
Yeah.
Baptize
Candle,
you
the oil, I'm trying to think
Did
of
you say
the words.
baptize you in the name of the Father and the
There
Son
you go.
and the
Right.
Holy
Those are
Spirit?
the words that have to be said. I baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. All right, let's go. How about confession?
I don't know the exact words. Let me see.
Lord, how does it go? I forgot.
And I absolve you from your
Absolve you of
sin.
your sins.
Okay, so those are the
And
words.
go and say.
So you know, the Catholics and Orthodox, you know, really use this stuff, but we say we can really now use the world around us because God gave humanity and materialism and the creation, he elevated its dignity by becoming human. So we no longer see material things as opposing God takes on material things as well. So, but these are ideas that take centuries to develop. Okay.
Because it's blowing up my mind right now.
You know, I mean, because I'm gonna say this. I'm listening to this, and I know Esther will agree with me. And so we're trying to process this so that we can put it in a language that somebody else can understand. How do I take what you said and what we're saying in this group and reimagine it so that our children can hear it or some other adult that I'm teaching can understand what you're trying to make me understand? And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get all, and Michael, you too. You're trying to get all this in your head so that you can be able to do what Father Rich does, come back and share it with somebody else. And we can't get that right, we ain't gonna say it right. Say it right.
So first of all, I would say, you know, there's a level of complexity of this that you're not going to get it the first time, right? It's
right.
just, you know, don't forget, I do this professionally. You know, I spent 4 years studying this stuff, and then I've spent 30 years living it out and practicing it. So, you know, just like if a medical doctor started talking about, you know, physical health, you'd grasp some of it, but you wouldn't necessarily get all of it.
No.
And about the third time that she told you how it's working, you might begin to see it.
Right. Okay.
So part of that is this, that, you know, don't forget, it's complex stuff, and you're not necessarily going to get it on the first round. Second, part of the point is that this can't be grasped by your mind. It's too big for your little mind to grasp. And so part of what we would say as Catholics is you just got to let go and experience it. So when you come to communion, don't overanalyze what you're doing. Just do it. And try to understand, how are you entering into a relationship with Jesus Christ by eating bread that we claim is his body and drinking wine that we claim is his blood. No one can really explain that, okay? But the more you do it, right, the more it means something to you, even if you can't explain it.
I'm glad you said that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, but that's part of what faith is. So you have to be careful that we're never going to be able to capture it completely. God is way too big for our little minds to lock them into a box, which we try to do all the time, but we just can't do it. I always loved the line at the end, if you ever saw the movie, the Song of Bernadette, you know, which was about St. Bernadette. And at the end, it says the line, "For those who do not believe, no explanation is possible. For those who do believe, no explanation is necessary."
Oh, that's really good.
Okay, so there's something to that. You know, chew on that for a while. All right, I'll say it again if you want to write it down.
Write it down, Brett. Write it down, Garnetta.
For those who do not believe, for those who do not believe, no explanation is possible. In other words, if you can't let go and turn to faith, there is no way I can convince you who God is.
That's right. That's true.
Okay. For those who do believe,
there's no
explanation is necessary.
That is so.
So once you have had that faith experience, you can grow in it more, you know, and become more educated and more understanding, but it's not necessary because you already got it. So that's why, you know, be careful about, don't try to earn your Masters of Divinity here. You know,
but you know what, Father? I mean, I know we all take the word seriously, and you know, trying to live it out can be complicated.
It is.
And what you just said earlier is that not to, I always try to understand things first of all, but then, you know, you said sometimes you just have to let it go, you know, and just let it unfold. And I have to come to that with myself sometimes. I'm like, Michael, just let it go and just live, you know, because sometimes it gets, I'm being honest, it gets overwhelming sometimes trying to, you know what I mean, grasp a hold of that and live it, you know, with the challenges that's out here in the world. And then it's like, okay, this is pressing on me. And I know when I get to that point, and then I just say, you know, you just had to let go and just live. Yeah.
The expression is walk by faith.
Walk by faith, that's right. All right, let's finish the last two verses. That's just the conclusion, and we'll go try to do the third letter and finish it up today. Go ahead, Michael, verse 12 and 13.
I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to unmute myself. Sorry. Although I have much to write to you, I do not intend to use paper and ink. Instead, I hope to visit you and to speak face to face so that our joy may be complete. The children of your chosen sister send you greetings. Okay.
So again, that whole idea, you know, I came so that my joy can be, that your joy can be, no, my joy can be your joy and your joy can be complete, right? That comes from the Gospel of John. And he repeats it here at the very end. So he basically says, all right, enough writing. I'm going to come and see you and talk to you about all these things. All right. You can see the next, this is now the third letter. It's the same thing. It's basically one chapter. You want to keep going, Michael, or you want to give that?
Sure.
somebody else. All
I
right,
thought
Yeah, I
I
can keep
said, I
going.
thought I said Jude somewhere. Didn't I see Jude on there?
Jude.
When you was going
Yeah,
strolling down, oh, okay, there it was.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, ready? Okay, the presbyter to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. Beloved, I hope you are prospering in every respect and are in good health, just as your soul is prospering. I rejoiced greatly when some of the brothers came and testified to how truly you walk in the truth. Nothing gives me greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. Beloved, you are faithful in all you do for the brothers, especially for strangers. They have testified to your love before the church. Please help them in a way worthy of God to continue their journey, for they have set out for the sake of the name and are accepting nothing from the pagans. Therefore, we ought to support such persons so that we may be co-workers in the truth.
Okay, let's stop right there. So what do you notice that's different about this letter from the other two letters?
He's writing to an individual this time?
Yes, he's writing to an individual this time. Person named Gaius or Gaius.
Gaius.
You don't really know who that is. But yeah, he's writing to one person. What themes do you hear again that are very consistent?
Let me see. Love is still in there.
Love is still in
Walking in truth.
Walking in the truth, right? Testifying, all of those ideas, in a way worthy of God to continue the journey. All of those things are.
And then he said, for the sake of the name, and he's not saying the name this time. For the sake of the name, that's new.
That's new, yes. For they have set out for the sake of the name. Let's see, there's a little asterisk. Let me see if that is something, right? I mean, we do know that it's the name of Jesus Christ, but
that's all it says.
Yeah, and are accepting nothing from the pagans, right? So they're staying now within their own sort of community and supporting each other in their faith, and they're not kind of commingling with pagans.
I watch a lot of history stuff, a lot of movies and a lot of things, documentaries on history about faith. And faith was incorporated in Europe. I would say Europe a lot more than it is today. I mean, faith was everything. But what bothered me was that between the Christians and the pagans, they did a lot of killing each other. I mean, Christians too. Under the kings, they would kill each other. They either had to be all Catholic or all Protestant or something like that. It was just horrible the way they treated each other in the name of Christianity.
Oh, we do pretty awful things in the name of Christ.
Yes. Something that I think he would not have appreciated. I don't know. I mean, when I look at it and I said, how could we? I don't know. How could we, in the name of Christ, do the things that we do to each other? I just don't understand.
So far in this letter, do you see that there's a problem?
Yeah, I do. I mean, when it says and are not accepting nothing from pagans.
Is that a problem?
I think
I don't think so.
I think so.
That shouldn't be a problem. It's just like he said in his last letter. If those who don't believe knocks on your door, do nothing with them. I believe I'm looking at it as being the same thing.
Accepting nothing from pagans means everything to me. You mean that
so who is accepting nothing from pagans? Who are they have set out for the sake of the name and are accepting nothing from the pagans?
For they have set out for the sake of the name.
Who are they?
Church.
Wait a minute. The brothers?
The brothers, and but more particularly
strangers.
So it sounds like it's not so much a problem, but it sounds like Gaius is a leader of a faith community, and it's interacting like other members of other Christian faith communities are arriving in town, right?
Right.
And, Gaius isn't sure how he should, how open he should be of these folks.
Okay.
And so, and it makes sense. I thought you were going to say it may, if you refer back to the second letter, certainly, where John is saying, have nothing to do with those who deny that Christ came in the flesh, right?
Regina did that. Regina did go back there.
So maybe that was too forceful, right? And now the Christians are afraid of everybody that they don't know.
Right.
And so
they pagans. They specifically says the pagans. Pagans are the one who don't believe. Am I right?
Pagans don't believe in Jesus Christ, correct?
Exactly.
Not Jews. So they're all the other. They're all the, they worship the Greek gods. Okay. Right.
All the other people.
Make it easy that way. So what probably is happening is there are, the people who deny that Jesus came in the flesh at that point would still, in essence, be thought of as Christians, right? They would have called themselves followers of Christ.
Right, that's what he said.
They may have even have been baptized.
That's what they said.
But John is sort of reprimanding the community and reprimanding them by being, they don't know what they're talking about. Stay away from them. Don't even put them up in your homes.
Oh shit, like them.
But it sounds to me like, well, then maybe that spooked the communities, because now they don't know who to trust. So it sounds like there are strangers coming to this community who claim to be followers of Christ.
Right.
And Gaius and the community are a little nervous about how they should deal with it. And so when you look at it from that perspective, John is saying to Gaius, you are faithful in all you do for the brothers and the strangers. And I know that because they've testified to me about your love for the church. So please help them in a way that's worthy of God to continue their journey.
Right.
Set out for the sake of the name, and they're not commingling with the pagans.
Right.
So
okay.
Support such persons so they may be co-workers in the truth. So, John's trying to thread this needle now, like, okay, don't hang out with these guys who deny Jesus came in the flesh, but don't be so spooked that you don't interact with other people who are Christians. You picked that up?
Yes.
Okay.
I never read it. Yeah, I kind of did, because he comes back in verse 8 and says, therefore we ought to support such persons, right, so that we may be co-workers in the truth.
Yeah. So I would say that there's not so much a problem as there is a concern, right? John is concerned that maybe some of these communities are becoming more insular because they're afraid of people from outside the group. And so he's trying to encourage them to be open. So don't be so suspicious of strangers that claim to be followers of Christ. Kind of check them out. And, if they're not accepting things from pagans and those, and they really are working in the name for the sake of the name, then, encourage them, support them. So let's continue. Go ahead, Michael, verse 9. And unmute yourself.
Okay, there we go. I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to dominate, does not acknowledge us. Therefore, if I come, I will draw attention to what he is doing, spreading evil nonsense about us. And not content with that, he will not receive the brothers, hindering those who wish to do so and expelling them from the church. Beloved, do not imitate evil, but imitate good. Whoever does what is good is of God. Whoever does what is evil has never seen God. Demetrius receives a good report from all, even from the truth itself. We give our testimonial as well, and you know our testimony is true.
Okay.
I have much to write to you.
Let's stop there.
Okay.
So now what's going on?
What's going on?
The Antichrist has entered entered into the scene.
There's a contrast that Demetrius, John is doing a contrast between Diotrephes and Gaius.
Diotrephes and
Gaius.
And Demetrius.
Or Demetrius?
Demetrius.
Who is Demetrius? What does Demetrius indicate?
What's that?
Who is Demetrius?
Well, he's another character. So what I would say first is in the 2 paragraphs, this is getting personal now. He's naming names. Okay. You don't see that before, right?
Right.
It's like, oh, stay away from these folks, or whoever does this is the Antichrist. Now we're naming names. Okay.
But he's saying here Demetrius receives a good report.
Yeah. As opposed to who?
Diotrephes.
Yeah, Diotrephes, he's a troublemaker.
Yeah, Diotrephes is a real troublemaker.
And he's so much a troublemaker, what might be happening?
He's turning people. He's turning people
He's
away.
spreading nonsense about the group.
About the belief. He's trying to change the good to evil.
Right.
John is saying, do not imitate evil.
Yep.
But the other person, Diotrephes, is trying to do just that.
Yeah, and what I would say is John is saying, listen, this guy's a troublemaker, and if I come, I'm going to,
call him out.
I'm going to call him out, right? Because of the evil nonsense. I think the us there is like the royal we. I mean, I think Diotrephes is trashing John, and John isn't too pleased about that.
Right.
No.
Right.
So yeah, we're naming names now, but he doesn't want to be like totally negative. So what does he do? He gives an example of someone who is.
Yes, Demetrius.
And that's Demetrius. So I think kind of the cool thing about this letter is it's getting personal here. And it's, and it shows you that infighting has been happening from the very beginning.
Yeah, we have that. Yeah, it's true.
And they were no exception. And every now and then you got to name names and speak the truth. All right, finish up.
I'm sorry, I wanted to know what Demetrius was because I have a cousin named Demetrius.
Well, Demetrius just is a name.
Evil.
I don't think
person, Regina.
About Demetrius.
He was a good person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here,
that's what you have to remember.
One of them speculating is maybe he's the guy who carried this letter.
From John.
John.
From John to Gaius.
From John.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody's telling John this stuff. Somebody's got to be telling John what's going on because he's not there.
Yeah. He's like the go-between. All right. Finish up, Michael.
Okay. Verse 13. I have much to write to you, but I do not wish to write with pen and ink. Instead, I hope to see you soon when we can talk face to face. Peace be with you. The friends greet you. Greet the friends. They're each by name.
So sounds like
he repeated what? Didn't we read this before?
Yeah.
It's the way he ends it's the way he ended the previous
letter. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was in the wrong place.
I do not intend to use paper and ink.
Yes.
So, I mean, John's really hopeful he's going to get to see people face to face. It's not clear that he's writing to the same communities, right?
Right.
So we don't know that for sure.
Oh.
So they could have been two separate communities. But he likes to see people face to face, but not sure that he actually gets there. All right, so that is Saint John the Evangelist. So I would just say, if you only want to remember a couple of things about Saint John, you want to remember, like, God is love. Love is central to everything. Everything comes back to love for St. John. And what are your examples? Your examples are, there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. That's only in the Gospel of John. That doesn't appear anywhere else. And from the first letter, God is love, and whoever loves remains in God, and God in him. Those are very, very, as we would say, Johannine themes, more so than any of the other Christian writers. I mean, Paul talks about love, but just not, it's not as central as it is for John. Everything comes down to love for St. John. And then the other thing you always want to remember is the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. That's the other Johannine. The others don't really deal with it very much. Paul doesn't deal with it. Matthew, Mark, and Luke don't deal with it. But John confronts it head on and is insistent that you believe that Jesus was fully human and fully divine. The Word became flesh. And if you deny that, then that is one of the things that's going to put you outside the Christian community. We can tolerate certain disagreements, but we cannot tolerate that. If you deny that Jesus came in the flesh, you got to go. You can't stay among us. All right.
I know, and then they get to fighting.
All right, well, let's go offline. So we'll end with our study of John here.